Today I'm going to be reviewing some more custom Plants vs. Zombies plushes. And while all of these custom Plants vs. Zombies plushes in this video were made by the YouTuber Artificial Bro, so you should definitely go subscribe to him, as though he's the creator of all of these plushes, and he's actually just really good at making these custom plushes, as though the majority of them are great. So yeah, make sure to go subscribe to him, his link is in the description, and yeah, starting off we have the Electric Blueberry. Now, for the face on the Electric Blueberry, it looks pretty good. All the details on the face are made out of a felt material, and they look pretty nice. The actual shape of the blueberry is also pretty well made, and the top of the plush also looks pretty good. And while the leaf base on this plush also looks pretty good, it doesn't have the correct amount of leaves, but still, it looks pretty good. So yeah, basically every single detail on this plush is perfectly accurate besides the amount of leaves, but that's just a really small detail, so basically the entire plush looks good. And well, next we have the Bong Choy. And while the face on this plush looks pretty good, the only thing that I don't really like about it is that some of the lines under the eyes do look a little weird. But besides that, I think they did a pretty good job making the face on this plush, and the top of the plush also looks pretty good. And while the arms on this plush also look pretty good, as well the correct color and everything, and they all just seem to be pretty nicely made. And while the only really downside with the arms is that they're not really standing up that well, as though they don't really have anything inside of them to make them stand up, so that's really the only downside to them. But yeah, overall, most of the details on this plush actually look pretty good, and I have to say, for a custom Bong Choy plush, it looks pretty nice. Next we have the Lightning Reed. Now, because of the blue head on this plush, it seems that this plush was based off of the Lynx and Lightning Reed that was made a while ago. And well, for the details on the face, it looks pretty good. Lightning Reed's overall a pretty simplistic plush, so that's why there's really not a lot of detail to it. I do really like the stem on this plush though, as it's correctly shaped, and they got the bend in the stem pretty nice on this plush. And while the leaf base on this plush also looks pretty good, the only thing that I would really change about is I would make the leaves slightly bigger, but yeah, overall I think that the Lightning Reed plush looks pretty good. As well, I think they pretty much got all of the details correct on it. It looks pretty nice, as well, since Lightning Reed's a pretty simplistic character, most of the details are basically correct. Now next we have the Blover. And while this Blover plush looks pretty good, the stem on it looks accurate, and while all the leaves and everything look pretty nice and they're nicely shaped. And while for the eyes on the mouth on this plush, they look pretty good and they look accurate to the game. So yeah, basically every single part of the plush is accurate, as well, since Blover doesn't really have a lot of details, basically every single detail is accurate, and this is a really nice plush. And while the only really bad thing about it is that one of the leaves on the side of the head are just slightly stitched further down than the other one, which sort of gives it a weird look, but besides that, the rest of the plush looks great in terms of all of the details. Now next we have the Cactus. Now the eyes on this plush look really good, as well I really like how they added the eyebrow just to give them a certain look, and well, it looks really nice. And while the mouth on this plush also looks pretty good, and all the spikes there on the sides of it also look accurate, and they look pretty nice. The arms seem to be really nicely stuffed, so they continue to stand up well, and well, they're also correctly shaped. And while the flower on the top of the head is definitely one of the best details on the plush, as well, it's nicely shaped and everything, and they also like the 3 small stems in the middle of them. And while I don't really have any complaints about this plush, as well, basically everything about it just looks really good. So yeah, honestly, there's not much to improve on this plush, but overall it just looks really good, and they definitely did a good job making this plush look extremely accurate. Next we have the Fat Beat. Now the face on this plush has a lot of detail to it, as well Fat Beat is overall a pretty detailed character. And while I think they basically got every single detail on the face correct, as well, it just looks pretty good and everything about it looks correct. And while the headphones on this plush look really good, as well, everything on it just looks really nice, and they're nicely stitched onto the head, and they seem to be in the correct place. As well, I've seen some Fat Bee plushes have the headphones either way too high or way too low on this plush, but I think they did a good job making them in the middle, and it looks pretty good. So yeah, overall, once again, this is a pretty accurate looking plush. The only really bad thing about it is that the headphone on the right of the plush is just stitched onto a slightly different place than the one on the left, making it look slightly off-centered, but besides that, the rest of the plush looks really good. Now next we have the Cabbage Pole. And while all the details on the face, being the eyes and the eyebrows, look pretty accurate, and while the eyebrows are nicely shaped. The leaf base on this plush actually looks really good, as well I like how they shaped all the leaves and everything, and it looks really nice. And while I like how they made all the separate parts of the cabbage pole that goes around the middle of the cabbage pole, I just like all the details and everything, and it looks really good. And well, the only thing that's really missing on this plush is the pole, but that's probably because this plush was based off of another plush that doesn't have a pole, as well basically every single Cabbage Pole plush doesn't have one. So it sort of makes sense why it doesn't have a pole, as well basically no Cabbage Pole plushes have ever been made with one. Next we have the Bloomerang. Now the eyes and mouth on this plush look pretty good, and well, the actual boomerangs also look pretty nice. As well, they're nicely shaped and they look accurate to the game. The only bad thing about it is that they're just way too skinny. As well, on other Bloomerang plushes, they're actually stuffed, but these ones are just made out of a single piece of felt material, which sort of gives it a weird look. But besides that, the rest of the details on this plush look pretty accurate. I like the light blue on the top of the plush as well, but it just makes it look very vibrant. And while the leaf base on this plush also just looks really good, as well as the correct color, and it's also just really nicely shaped. But yeah, besides the bloomerangs, the rest of the details on this plush actually just look really good, and well, even though the bloomerangs aren't actually stuffed, they still overall look pretty good with the actual shape of them. Next we have the potato mine. Now the dirt on the bottom of the plush looks pretty good, and well, the actual details on the face like the eyes and mouth also look really nice. As well, everything looks pretty accurate on the face, and as everything is just nicely shaped, and well, the only really bad thing about it that I don't really like is that the red part of the plush is just a bit too big. As well, I think the gray and red part of the plush is just a bit too big, and they should have just made it a little smaller, but besides that, the rest of the plush overall looks really good. As well, I just think that the proportions are a bit off because of that, but the rest of the plush looks nice, especially with all the details on the face. Now next we have the split pea. Now, the leaf base on this plush is basically the only part of the plush that I don't really like, as well, I just think that it's supposed to be a little bit bigger, and same thing with the stem. But besides that, the actual faces on this plush look really good. As well, the shape of the faces are actually basically perfect, and they're some of the most accurate looking custom pea shooter faces I've seen. As of a lot of the times when customs are made, sometimes the face shapes are just a bit off, but these actually look basically perfect. And while the eyes on both of these plushes look pretty good, and they seem to be just really nicely stuffed. So yeah, overall, if the leaf base was just a bit bigger, I think that this plush would basically just be perfect. And well, next we have the three-peater. And while the leaf base on this plush looks pretty good, it seems to be nicely stuffed and also really nicely shaped. And while the same thing with the three stems, as though they just are really nicely made, and while they also seem to be really well stuffed, so they're able to support the heads on top of them. And while the three heads on this plush also just look really good, as well, it uses the exact same pattern as the split pea plush, and well, it looks really good. As well, each head is just really nicely stuffed and also just really nicely shaped, so basically everything just looks really accurate. And well, compared to the Lynxen 2 and Modern Bootleg 3-peater, this one's definitely a lot better. Now next we have the Gloom Shroom. Now the eyes on this plush look pretty accurate to the game. I like how the eyes are shaped, and same thing with the eyebrows, so it just gives it a really nice look. The head seems to be really nicely stuffed on this plush, and while that goes through basically every single part of the plush, it's just really nicely shaped. And while the mouth also seems to be pretty well made and is also the correct shape, so yeah, overall, basically every single detail on this plush is correct, and well, they all just look really nice. So yeah, honestly, there's nothing really bad about this plush besides the fact that the head is just a bit too small, but if they just made the head a little bit bigger, that's really the only thing that you could improve on this plush, is basically every single detail on this plush just looks really good. Now next up we have the Winter Melon. Now the leaf base on this plush is really nicely shaped, and it's very clearly based off of the Lynxen leaf base, and well, they did a really nice job shaping it and everything, and it looks good. And while all the details on the face also just look really nice, and you could very clearly tell this one's based off of the Lynxen design, well, they did a great job remaking it. As of all the details on the face look really good, the melon shape is really nice, and the stem on the side of the melon also looks pretty good. So yeah, I have to say, this is actually one of the best Winter Melon custom plushes I've ever seen, as it just looks really nice. And while the only detail that's really missing on this plush is the pole, but that's because it's based off of another plush that doesn't have a pole, so obviously, why would they add that? But yeah, besides that one detail on this plush, basically every single other detail on this plush looks really good, and they did a great job with it. Next we have the Plantern. Now this is actually one of the first Plantern plushes I've ever seen, as well basically no one makes any merchandise of the Plantern. As well, it's just a really underrated plant, so I'm glad they made a plush of it, and they did a great job with it. As well, the stem on it just looks really good, and all the details hanging off of it with the leaves overall just look really accurate, and they're really nicely shaped. And while the actual head of the Plantern is nicely stuffed, and it's also correctly shaped, and I really like how they cut the eyes, and it just looks really good. So yeah, basically every single detail on this plush just looks really nice, and I'm really glad that they made a Plantern plush, as well. I've never really seen any other Plantern plushes out there. Now next we have the pumpkin. Now the shape of the pumpkin looks pretty good, and while they actually fit normal plants inside of it, as you can tell by this picture, there's a Langston kernel pole inside of it, meaning that it's a pretty good size. And while all the details on the face just look really good, so they're all just really nicely cut out, especially with the eyes, and everything looks good. So yeah, all the details on this pumpkin plush basically look perfectly accurate. I'm really glad that they made it hollow and also big enough to fit an actual plant in. Now next we have the twin sunflower. Now the leaf base on this plush just looks really good, and it's very clearly based off of the Langston design. They did a great job remaking it. And while all the stems on this plush look pretty good, they seem to be really nicely stuffed, so the heads are able to continue standing up. And while the actual sunflower's faces look pretty good, the petals on this plush seem to have 2 layers of them just to give them a bit more detail. And well, overall, I think that the petals are pretty nicely shaped, and there's also a pretty good amount of them, so yeah, overall, I think that the faces on this plush look pretty good. The only really thing that I don't like about them is I think that the mouths are just a bit too long, as though they go from each side of the plush, so they look pretty strange. As well, since they go across the entire face, it sort of gives them a weird look, but besides that one detail, I think that the eyes and basically everything else just looks really good. Now next we have a lily pad. Now they actually made 2 lily pad plushes, and the first one seems to be based off of the Plants vs. Zombies 2 design. And while the eyes on this plush seem to be nicely made, and I also like the extra details on the back of the lily pad just to make it look a bit more accurate to the game, and well, that's all there really is to say. As well, since the lily pad is just a really simplistic character, that's all there really is to say, as well, it's just really flat and there's not much else to say. And well, there's also this other design of the lily pad where the eyes aren't actually sticking out of the head and they actually just be put onto the head, which I think looks still pretty good. It obviously doesn't have as much detail to it, but it still looks really nice, and it also seems to be pretty nicely stuffed. So yeah, both of these lily pad plushes look pretty good, but I do have to say the first one is just a bit more detailed. Now next we have the Starf Fruit. Now the one to the left is clearly based off of the first game, while the one on the right is clearly based off of Plants vs. Zombies 2. And well, for the Plants vs. Zombies 1 plush, it looks pretty good. As of all the details like the mouth and everything are just really nicely made, and all the details are correctly shaped and they look pretty good. And while they did a good job making the actual star shaped and everything is nicely stuffed, and all the points of the stars seem to be basically the exact same size, which makes them look pretty good. And while the stem on the top of the head is also pretty nicely shaped, and it also looks really nice. And for the Plants vs. Zombies 2 plush is also just really nicely shaped, and all the details on the face just look really good. As well, they all just look accurate to the game, and all the leaves around it also look accurate to the game, and they're really nicely made. And the only really downside to them is that for whatever reason, on the left side of the plush, there doesn't seem to be as many leaves. But that could just be because of the angle of the picture, but for whatever reason, there doesn't seem to be as many leaves on that one side. But still, overall, both of these plushes look pretty good, and they're really nicely made. Now next up we have the Spike Rock. Now this definitely has to be the most accurate plush I've seen out of all of these customs so far, as well, it just has so many details on it. As well, the eyes on this plush look perfectly accurate, and well, basically everything on this plush is basically just perfect. As well, all the points are just really nicely made, and this is definitely the most detailed Spike Rock plush I've ever seen, and well, it was actually the first Spike Rock plush I've ever seen. As well, for whatever reason, I've never seen another Spike Rock plush, and it just seems that no one else made them besides this one person. Well, they did a great job with it. So yeah, out of all the plushes in the video, this definitely has to be the most accurate one, at least in my opinion. Now next up we have the Tangle Kelp. Now they made 2 Tangle Kelp plushes, and well, they're basically just the exact same plush, except one of them for some reason has pupils in the eyes. And well, that's probably because the Plants vs. Zombies 2 design does have pupils in the eyes, but it seems to be mostly made out of the Plants vs. Zombies 1 design, which just sort of makes it look weird. But yeah, the one on the right definitely looks a lot better, as all the kelp on it just looks really good, and it also seems to be just really nicely made. As though the actual face part of the plush seems to be nicely shaped, and the eyes are also just really nicely shaped, and that's all it really is to say, as though there's just not a lot of detail on Tangle Kelp. But yeah, the one on the right is definitely a lot better than the one on the left. Now next we have the garlic. Now the eyes on this plush sort of look strange, as though for whatever reason they just seem to be really wide open, but the mouth on this plush just looks really good. And while the mouth is probably the most accurate detail on the entire plush, and the top of the garlic also looks really good, as well, but it's just really nicely shaped and just looks really nice. And well, for the actual body of the garlic, it's just really nicely stuffed and everything, and it's overall just really nicely shaped, and it's a really nice looking garlic plush. And while I do think that the eyes do look a little weird, but besides that one detail, it just looks pretty nice. Now next up we have the spikeweed. Now this one's definitely not as detailed as the spike rock plush, but it still overall looks really good, as I really like the eyes, as the eyebrows just match them really well. As the eyebrows just make the eyes have a really good shape to it, and the actual spikes on the top of the plush are just really nicely stuffed, and they look pretty good. I just think that there should be a few more spikes, but besides that, the rest of the plush looks great. Now next up we have the Imitator. Now the body of this plush is really nicely made, and is correctly shaped and everything, and really well stuffed. And while the actual eyes on this plush just look really good, I like all the lines around the eyes and also under the eyes, and the actual expression of the Imitator also just looks really good. The hat on it is also really nicely made, as well, it's just correctly shaped and everything, and well stuffed. And while I also really like the pieces coming off of the side of the Imitator, as though they're just really nicely made, I also like how some of them are bent, as though it just gives it a bit more detail. And on the bottom of the plush, you could also see a few spots, which is just a really small detail, but also a good one. So yeah, this is definitely the most detailed Imitator plush I've ever seen, and well, it just looks really good, and basically has nothing missing on it. So yeah, basically every single detail on this plush is correct, and they look great. Next up we have the gold magnet. Now the stem on this plush seems to be nicely stuffed, and the leaves below the magnet also look pretty good, as though they're just really nicely shaped, and they look nice. And while all the details on the eyes look pretty good, I like how they added eye shines to it, as well, it just gives it a bit more detail, and the actual shape of the magnet also looks pretty good. So yeah, once again, basically every single part of the plush just looks really good, and it's basically just perfectly accurate. As well, there's not much that you could actually change about this plush, as well, basically everything about it just looks really good. Now next up we have the ice shroom. Now the face on the ice shroom does look pretty nice. I do think that the eyes and mouth sort of look weird though, as though for whatever reason I just don't really like how the eyes look. But besides the eyes, I think the rest of the plush just looks really nice, as all the actual body of the plush is just really nicely stuffed, and all the ice spikes look really good. As well, there's actually just a lot of ice spikes on this plush, and they're all made out of a felt material, and they all look great. As though most of them just stick out of the plush, which just makes them look really nice. There are a few on the right side of the head that are going down, which just make it look sort of weird, but the rest of them look pretty nice. So yeah, overall, this is a pretty nice looking ice shroom plush, and the only thing that I don't really like about it are the eyes, and that's basically the only thing that I would improve on. Now next up we have the spring bean. Now the face on the spring bean looks pretty good, as well as a very simplistic face, so it looks pretty nice. And while the actual shape of the plush looks pretty good, and as you can tell, on the spring on this plush, it seems to be made out of a very unique material. And while I don't really know which material it's made out of, but whatever they used, they did a great job with it. As well, it actually just gives us this really nice spring look to it, and well, it looks great. And while they also use this on the stem, so yeah, overall, this is a pretty creative plush, as well, I don't really know what they used to make it, but whatever it is, it looks really nice. It's the first spring bean plush I've seen to do this, as all the other ones just use a normal plush material. So yeah, overall, it's pretty unique. Next we have the snow peas on botany. And well, for the face on this plush, it seems to be really nicely made, as well as correctly shaped and everything, and the actual eyes on it look pretty good. And while the sheer part of the plush also looks pretty good, and well, another really cool thing about this plush is that the rest of the body is actually fully custom made. As well, usually with some botany plushes, most people just take a normal zombie plush made by Linkson and just cut off the head of it and put their own head on it, but they actually fully made the custom body, and well, it looks great. As well, the coat on the shirt just looks really good, and well, all the details like the legs and everything just look really nicely made, and it's definitely one of the best customs on botany plushes I've seen, as well, most people don't actually put that much effort into them. So yeah, overall, this is definitely a really nice looking Zabotany plush, and they did a great job with it. And while they also made this pea shooter version, which is basically just the exact same as the snow pea one, except it just has a pea shooter head on it. Now next up we have the ghost pepper. Now the eyes and the mouth are pretty simplistic, as though they're just pieces of felt material, so they're pretty simple to make, and while the stem on this plush looks really good. As well, it seems to be nicely stuffed, and the bend in it also looks pretty good, as well, it's just a pretty small detail, but it still looks pretty nice, and the sides of the stem coming off of the plush also look pretty good. And while the actual shape of the ghost pepper looks pretty good, as well the bottom of it is nicely cut so it looks accurate to the game and they did a nice job stuffing it. And while the bottom of the ghost pepper plush also looks pretty accurate and it seems to be nicely stuffed there as well, so yeah, overall it's a pretty nice plush. Now next up we have the Lavator. Now for the dirt base on this plush, it looks pretty good, and while the eyes on this face also look pretty nice. As well, I like the eye shines in the eyes, and the eyebrows are also pretty nicely shaped, and the piece on top of it also looks pretty good and is correctly shaped to the game. And while the shape of the Lavator also looks pretty good, it's just a really strange plush to make, as a Lavator is just a very forgettable plant. So this is probably one of, if not the only Lavator plush that's out there, as it was just a really strange plant to make. But yeah, overall, it still looks pretty good. Next up we have the head butter lettuce. Now, the mouth on this plush looks pretty good, as it was nicely made, and I also like the tongue on it, as it was correctly shaped and everything, and it looks pretty good. And while all the leaves on the top of the head actually just look really nice, as though there's tons of different layers on it, which just gives it a lot more detail. And while the leaves are this way throughout the entire plush, overall, it looks pretty good, and while also under the leaves, you could also see that they added eyes. And while even though the eyes do look pretty weird, it's still just a pretty cool detail that I'm glad that they added. So yeah, overall, the head butter lettuce plush actually just looks really good, as most of the details are just really nicely made. Now next up we have the umbrella leaf. Now both of these umbrella leaf plushes are basically just the exact same plush, except the one on the left is just a bit shorter than the one on the right, and the one on the right overall just looks a bit better with the leaves and everything. And while the bodies on this plush look pretty good, they are the wrong color, as though they are supposed to be a green color, but I'm guessing that this plush is based off of the Helly World one, which is why it's white. And while the eyes on this plush look pretty good, and while all the leaves are actually just really nicely made. As though the leaves are just really nicely shaped and everything, and they overall look pretty good, and it seems that they added a good amount of them, which just gives it a bit more detail. So yeah, overall, for the one on the right, it's just a really good umbrella leaf plush, and looks very accurate, besides the white body color, obviously, but that's because it's based off of another plush. Next up, we have the aloe. Now, the water drop on this plush is actually really nicely shaped, and it also seems to be really well stuffed, so it looks accurate to the game. And while the shape of the aloe's body also looks pretty good, and the eyes on it look really good, as though they added some extra eye shines onto it, which just gives it a bit more detail, and it looks pretty nice. The eyebrows on this plush are also pretty nicely shaped, and all the leaves around it look pretty good, and I like how they're coming off of the plush, so it just gives it a bit more detail, and it looks nice. So yeah, overall, there's really not any inaccuracies about this plush, so basically the entire plush looks really good, as all the details are just really nicely made, and they all look good. Next we have the cattail. Now, the leaf base on this plush actually looks really good, as the leaves actually have a lot of detail on them and have some nice stitching on it, which just gives it a bit more detail, while the leaf base looks great. And while the face on this plush also just looks really good, as it basically has every single detail that's needed on a cattail, and it looks great. As of all the details on the face are just really nicely shaped and everything, and they did a great job with it. And while the rest of the cattail seems to be really nicely stuffed, the ears look pretty good, and the actual tail on the plush also looks nice. As it uses all the correct colors and everything, and overall just looks really good, and well, this is one of the best cattail custom plushes I've seen. As well, basically every single detail looks correct, and well, overall, it's just a really nice looking plush. Now next up we have the Infinite. Now overall, Infinite's actually a pretty easy plush to make, as it was just a very simplistic character. As well, the only really details on Infinite are the eyes, mouth, and also the line under the mouth, and well, overall, they got everything right. And while the shape of the Infinite also looks pretty good, and it seems to be really nicely stuffed, and the only thing missing from it is the actual base of it. But that would basically be impossible to make, as though the actual leaf base in the game is basically just a projector, and in the game, Infinite is actually floating over the leaf base, so it would basically just be impossible to make it. So yeah, overall, this is just a really nice plush and looks pretty good. Now next up we have the Stunion. Now the face on this plush looks pretty good, and I like how they made the mouth and eyes and everything, as though the look on this plush is basically perfect compared to the game. And while the green part coming out of the top of the head also looks pretty good, as though it's accurately shaped and everything, and overall just looks pretty nice. And well, the only thing that they could have really changed about this plush is that they could have made the green parts of the plush just a bit lighter, as in the game they're sort of a lighter green color than what's on this actual plush. But besides that, the rest of the Stunion plush actually looks really good, and that's just one minor detail that's sort of off. Now next up we have the Sapling. Now for the face on this plush, it looks pretty good, as though Sapling doesn't really have a lot of details on its face, so it's basically just the eyes. And well, the shape of it looks pretty good, and the actual pole on this plush is definitely the most detailed part. As the leaves coming off of it actually just look really good, so as you can tell by these pictures, the leaves are just really nicely shaped and everything, and they look great. And while at the end of the pole, the actual sap on it looks pretty good, as it was nicely shaped and everything, and it looks nice. So yeah, overall, definitely the most accurate detail on the plush are the leaves, just because they're just really nicely shaped and everything, and basically every single detail on the plush just looks pretty good. Now next up we have the AKEE. Now this is actually a really nice looking plush, as well the face actually looks basically perfectly accurate, and well, same thing with the leaf base. As well, the leaves are actually pretty well detailed, and they look really nice, and they look basically just perfectly accurate to the game. And while the actual body of the plush looks pretty good, as well, it's just nicely shaped and everything, and the cannons on the top of the plush also just look really good. As well, they're all the correct heights and everything, and they also have some details on the sides of them just to make them look a bit better, and well, basically everything about them just look really good. So yeah, this definitely has to be one of my favorite custom plushes out of all of these, as well, it just looks really good, and it's one of the more accurate looking ones. As well, there's really no details on this plush that sort of look inaccurate, so yeah, overall, it's just a really nice looking plush. Now next up we have the olive pit. Now the face on the olive pit looks pretty good. I like the eye shines in the eyes, and while all the details on the face look pretty good. As of all the details, like the pink around the top of the head, look pretty good and everything, and they got it all accurate, it's nicely stuffed. The 4 leaves on this plush also look pretty good, and they seem to basically be the exact same leaves they use for the base of the AKE plush. And well, for the bottom of the olive pit, once again, just looks pretty good, as well as the correct shape and everything, and the only really downside to it is that this plush just can't really stand up without being leaned against something. But besides that, all the details on this plush actually look pretty accurate, and they basically got everything about it correct. And well, once again, this is basically the only olive pit plush I've ever seen, as once again, it's just a plant that not a lot of people actually sort of care about or even think about usually. Now next we have the sea shroom. Now the face on this plush looks pretty good, as well the eyes look pretty nice, and same thing with the shooter part of the plush. As well, it's nicely stuffed and everything, and the face shape also looks pretty good, and for the cap on this plush is nicely shaped, and I also like all the spots on it. As well, all the spots are nicely made and everything, and this plush overall just looks really good, and the bottom of the plush also looks really nice, as well there's the correct amount of like tentacle things on the bottom of it. And while they all seem to be around the exact same length, and they're all nicely shaped and everything, so yeah, overall, this is just a really nice looking sea shroom plush. As though the majority of the details on this plush just look really good, and they did a nice job with them. Now next we have the gold leaf. Now overall, Gold Leaf is just a really simplistic character, as the really only details on this plush are the eyes and the mouth. And while they look pretty accurate to the game, and the actual shape of the Gold Leaf also looks pretty good, it's just a really flat looking plush, as well there's just not a lot of stuffing in it, well that's accurate to the game. And well, that's all there really is to say, as well it's just a Gold Leaf, and there's not much else to elaborate on. Now next up we have the Dogtail. Now, just like the Cattail, the leaf face on this plush actually looks really good, as all the leaves are just really nicely made. And while the face on this plush actually looks great, as it was basically missing no details, as all the details on the face, like the eyes, eyebrows, and mouth, just look really good. As well, the nose on this plush looks pretty good. I like the tongue on it. I also like the extra hair in the middle of the face, just gives it a bit more detail, and makes it look more accurate to the game. And while the ears on this plush are nicely shaped and everything, and it looks pretty good, and the actual tail on this plush is basically the only part of the plush that I don't really like, as well I just think that's a bit too wide. So I think it should just be a little bit skinnier, but besides that, the rest of the plush is actually great, and basically all the details on the face look correct. As well, overall, it's just a really detailed looking plush, and they just did a really good job with it. Now next up we have the Jacko Lantern. Now, the face on this plush looks pretty good. The only thing that I would really change about the face is that I would make the actual pumpkin part of the plush a bit bigger. As well, I think that the eyes and mouth just take up way too much of the face, so I think they should have just made the pumpkin part of the plush just a little bit bigger, but besides that, the rest of the plush looks good. As well, all the details on the face look pretty nice, and while the stem on the top of the plush also looks pretty good, and while the fire on it also looks pretty good, as well, it's nicely shaped and everything. I don't really know what they put on the fire, but it just added a bit more detail, and it sort of looks strange. But yeah, overall, this is a pretty nice looking plush. The only thing that I would have changed, I just would have made the pumpkin a little bit bigger, but besides that, it looks pretty nice. Next up, we have the Witch Hazel. Now, the leaf base on this plush actually looks really nice, and while the face on this plush also just looks pretty good. And well, for the hair on this plush, it actually just looks really good. As though somehow they managed to put something like inside the felt material, I'm guessing, as though the hair is all bent really weirdly, so yeah, I'm assuming that they probably put something inside the felt material. As though the way the hair is actually just standing up and everything just looks really weird, and they probably wouldn't be able to do that without putting something inside of him. And while the hat on this plush also looks pretty good, as well, it has all the correct details on it, and it's overall just pretty nicely shaped, and it looks nice. So yeah, overall, this is a really nicely detailed plush and everything, and basically everything about it is accurate, and it looks great. Next up, we have the Venus Flytrap. Now, the leaf base on this plush looks pretty good. I would have made the leaf slightly bigger, but besides that, it looks fine. And while the actual body of this plush looks pretty good, as all the details are really nicely made and everything, is also correctly shaped. The eyes on this plush look pretty good. I'm glad they added the lines around the eyes and also under the eyes, as it just gives it a bit more detail. And while the main part of the plush is the actual mouth on the top of the head, and while all the teeth on it look pretty good, and it seems to be nicely shaped and everything, and the inside of the mouth is pink and it looks pretty good. And well, overall, this is actually just a pretty obscure character, as I'm pretty sure one of the only games it was in, it was Plants vs. Zombies Online, so yeah, overall, it's a pretty specific and weird plant to make, but overall, I'm glad that they made it, as well, but just makes the plush a bit more exclusive. As well, I don't think anyone else has ever made a Venus Flytrap plush. Now, next up, we have the Pepper Pole. Now, the leaf base looks pretty good, and while the actual pepper looks nice, all the details on the face look really good, and the eyebrows are nicely shaped. And while the only thing that I don't really like about this plush is I think that the actual pepper part of the plush is just a bit too small compared to the leaf base. As well, I either think that I should have made the leaf base just smaller, or made the pepper part of the plush just a bit bigger, as I just think it's a bit too small. But yeah, the stem on the top of the head looks pretty good, and I can't really tell if there's a pole on it or not, but I'm assuming there's probably not, as that would be really hard to make. So yeah, overall, there's definitely a few details I would have changed about this plush, and well, it definitely could be improved on. Now, next up we have the Mistletoe. Now, the face on this plush looks pretty good. I think that I should have made it just a slightly lighter blue color, but besides that, it looks pretty nice. And while the eyes on this plush actually look pretty good, so they actually have a lot of extra detail added to them just to make it look more accurate, and well, it looks great. And while the actual hat on this plush looks really nice, and while I like the cotton balls they added around the hat, it just gives it a lot more detail, and it looks good. And while for the arms on this plush, they look pretty nice, and it's also holding a snowball. And while the snowball on this plush is actually held on by Velcro, so you can actually move the arms on this plush and take the snowball off of it. Which is actually a pretty creative detail, which I'm really glad that they made it. It was just a really nice and cool detail. And while the actual base on this plush is pretty simplistic, as it was just a white part of the plush that's just nicely stuffed and everything, so the actual plush just stands up well. So yeah, overall, I actually really like this plush, especially because of all the details on the face and everything. It's also just really unique that they made the snowball have Velcro on it so it can attach to the arms. Now, next up we have the Bunchie. Now, the face on this plush looks pretty accurate to the game, as well all the details and everything just look really good. And while the pink part of the plush above the eyes, which I'm pretty sure is supposed to be a flower, also looks pretty good, as it's nicely made and everything, and looks accurate to the game. The shape of this plush overall just looks really good. I like the ears on it. I like how the one on the right is nicely bent and everything, as it just gives it a bit more detail and makes it look slightly more accurate. And while all the spikes on this plush actually look really good as in the game, this plant just has tons of spikes on it, and well, this plush represents that really well. So yeah, overall, this is just a pretty nice plush, as every single detail on this plush is just really accurate and everything, and it looks great. And well, it's probably one of the only Bunchie plushes out there, as it's just a really specific character that actually is pretty new. Next up, we have the Hypno Shroom. Now, the face on the Hypno Shroom looks really good. I like the eyes and everything, and they did a great job making it, and the mouth also looks accurate. And while the cap on this plush also looks really good, as they basically just did the exact same thing that Lynx and 2 did, just making it a ton of different colors, and well, it looks great. As all the colors on the cap just go really well together, and some of them blend really nicely, so yeah, overall, it's just a really nice looking plush, and it looks good. Next up, we have the Scaredy Shroom. Now, the shape of the Scaredy Shroom is pretty good. The eyes and eyebrows on this plush do look pretty nice, though the eyebrows are supposed to be on the cap, and they're not actually supposed to be on the actual body of it. And while the shooter part of the plush also seems to be nicely stuffed and everything, and it looks pretty good. And while the actual cap on this plush is nicely shaped and everything, and while it actually takes up a good amount of the plush, and while it looks good. As well, I think it's the correct size and everything, and all the spots on the head also look pretty nice. So yeah, basically every single detail on this plush is accurate when it comes to the shape of the cap and everything, and also just basically every single detail besides where the eyebrows are placed, but that's just a really small detail. So yeah, overall, for a Scaredy Shroom plush, it actually looks pretty good. Next up, we have the tall nut. Now, the shape of the tall nut's pretty good, so it's just nicely shaped and also just really nicely stuffed. And while the actual expression on the face, they did a really good job making it by making the eyebrows and mouth and just a really angry expression. Well, they did a really good job with that. And while the actual eyes on this plush look pretty good, I'm glad that they added a black outline around the eyes, although it just gives it a bit more detail and makes it just look slightly better. So yeah, overall, this is a pretty simplistic plush that doesn't really have a lot of details, but that makes sense as Loptolna is overall a pretty simplistic character, and they got all the details that they needed. Next up, we have the coffee bean. Now, the shape of the coffee bean looks pretty good, all the details on the face like the eyes and mouth look pretty good, and the pupils also are facing in a certain direction just to give it a bit more detail and make it look more accurate. And while the leaf on this plush is also pretty nicely made, as well as the correct shape and everything, and it's also just slightly bent just to give it a bit more detail. So yeah, overall, all the details on this plush are accurate to what the coffee bean looks like, and well, they did a nice job with it. Next up, we have the puff shroom. Now, for whatever reason, instead of just making it out of a normal plush material like their other plushes, this one just seems to be made out of this really strange material. As you can tell, it's just really fuzzy and everything, and it looks strange. So yeah, overall, that just makes the entire plush just look a little off, and while the face on this plush looks pretty good, and the shooter part of the plush is nicely shaped. And while the cap on the top of the plush also looks pretty good, it should just be slightly bigger, but besides that, it looks pretty nice, and all the spots on it look pretty good. I don't really know why they made it out of this certain material, as well, it just makes it look really strange. I think they should have just made it out of the exact same material as the other plushes. And well, next up we have the Gloom Shroom. Now, the face on this plush looks really nice, as though the eyes are just really nicely made and everything, and same thing with the mouth. As though the eyes actually have a couple of different layers of it, just to give it a bit more detail, while all the shooters on this plush look really nice. As though they're all correctly shaped and everything, and while they look to be pretty nicely stuffed, and they look accurate to the game. And while the tan part of the plush under the face looks pretty good, as though it's just nicely stuffed and everything, and it's just there to hold up the actual face and everything, and it looks fine. So yeah, the actual face on this plush actually has a lot of details, but it's probably actually pretty hard to make all these separate different shooters and make them all the same size and everything to make them look accurate. So yeah, overall, this is just a pretty nice looking plush. And well, that does it for all the customs in this video. Obviously, there was a ton of them, and well, most of them are actually really good. As of the majority of these plushes are just really accurate to the game, and they look great. So yeah, once again, shout out to Artificial Bros, as though he's the one that made all these plushes, so make sure to go down in the description and find his channel and go subscribe to it. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please don't subscribe and comment down below which of these custom plushes are your favorite, and yeah, have a great day.